Welcome to episode 611 of Salsidoparanormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm sharing true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salsidoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions or accounts of paranormal experiences. Whether they're your own or from others that you trust, happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. Thank you all for listening, whether you are here for the live streams on Discord or if you listen to the podcast or YouTube feeds or on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. There you can hear replays of 2 episodes of the show every night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right before Troubled Minds Radio comes on. And as always, I want to thank Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, for having me on the network and putting my shows up there. If you'd like to support the show, there are some different ways to do that. You can rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform and share the show with others. You can also find books I've written over on Amazon, paranormal fiction and nonfiction. You can also sign up for the Patreon page, where you'll find 2 extra episodes per week of the show of True Paranormal Stories from the web. And that's for all paid membership tier levels there. Or you can just make a one-time donation through PayPal. Support is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows, from equipment to research materials to travel expenses in some cases. So, with all that being out of the way, I think I can get to the material here. These accounts of experiences, and this is my favorite, one of my favorite 2 types of shows that I do, and so I always look forward to doing these shows, and so let me get to the document here where I have everything set up. And I hope everyone is doing okay. Again, thank you for listening. This first one says, I recently returned from a holiday in Spain. I went jogging every morning at sunrise. The jogging route was along the beach. Other people were present during these jogs. Workers, dog walkers, other people exercising. It was semi-light during the morning, during these jogs. One morning, at the top of a set of steep steps, I saw, I can't talk, a tall figure about 6 meters ahead. The figure appeared to be covered in a black sheet. It resembled a ghost, but covered in a black fabric instead of white. The figure was standing in the middle of the path. I was startled at first and had slowed down, not sure I wanted to get too close to the figure. I thought that the figure might be wearing some kind of religious dress. The fabric on this figure moved with gusts of the wind. After a couple of minutes, I decided to pass the figure. As I approached, the figure appeared to get shorter. When I got close, it was revealed to be an ornamental rock. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of the light. I finished my jog and the rest of my holiday. After I got home, I thought again about the experience. What is confusing to me about the experience is the sense of fabric moving in the wind. This detail doesn't align with the explanation of it being a rock. Does anyone have an idea of what happened? Could my imagination have run wild from a trick of the light? And that's where that one ends. I have no idea what they saw, other than maybe some kind of apparition of some dark figure. I wonder if shadow figures can look almost like sort of stereotypical images of, like the writer said there, sort of a figure covered in like a white fabric or a white sheet. But in some cases it can be dark, it can be shadow. I don't know. And maybe it just somehow sunk into the ground, and then where it was at, there was a stone there. But then I wonder if the stone, I guess there are some rocks that are dark, but it doesn't seem like the shape would match if it's a natural stone, unless it was some kind of unless it was carved somehow. But there's still the aspect of the size changing. I don't know. That one seems like it could go in a couple different ways there, as far as whether it's paranormal or not. But I wonder too what other people that were around them, what they saw, if anything. So if they were on vacation, maybe they didn't really know anyone there, so they couldn't really talk to anyone, or didn't think to. So that's a unique one. I'm not sure what to make of that one there, even more so than others that I share here on a regular basis. But yeah, I just wonder. I feel like I've heard of sort of. It almost sounds like a different version. I've heard of these shadow figures or shadow masses that appear to be like, they appear to move or float or like bags, but also if you think of fabric, like maybe a really light fabric just floating in the breeze, or a wind, a gusty, strong wind. I wonder if that would also appear. I wonder if it was just one of these entities that people sometimes see moving more, moving around. But in this case, it was just, this figure was, whatever this was stationary at the time. But then either faded away or sunk into the ground somehow, as the person that had the experience got closer to it. So a lot of options there, but yeah, I thought that was a neat one there to share. So moving on to the next one here. This one says, I am a college student in Kansas. I work 30 minutes away from the college due to a lack of local job opportunities. My work shift is from 5 p.m. until 11 p.m. closing time. The commute is on a highway through a very remote area. The highway has no off-ramps. It says branches, but I wonder if it means off-ramps. Just a straight road for 30 minutes. This happened while I was driving home after work. There weren't any other vehicles on the highway at the time. In the opposite lane, I saw a statue of a swan. The statue was 5 to 6 feet tall. It was standing upright. I was shaken by the sight. I wanted to turn around to check. It took 5 to 10 minutes to turn around due to the highway constraints. When I made it back to the spot, the statue was gone. There weren't any vehicles parked on the side of the road. There weren't any signs of anyone picking up or moving the statue. My boyfriend suggested it might be a fraternity prank, but that seemed unlikely as the nearest college was 20 minutes away. Can anyone explain what I saw? And that's where that one ends. I've heard of people having sightings of statues that appear to move, or even legends or folklore of that happening. That is odd that it sort of appeared on the highway and then was gone. Not too long in general, not too long later. Some kind of apparition of a statue. I feel like I've heard of that before too. Maybe not it's not super common. It's maybe a little more rare than like a traditional sort of a ghost sighting, whatever ghosts are. But I wonder, and I didn't think to do this beforehand, because I never do. I didn't think to look into the significance of a statue of a swan, but I wonder if it had some kind of message, if it was some kind of message just for that person, for something to do with their own life from some other entity, who knows who or why, or I mean, especially how. But that really is amazing. It's not, again, that's not your stereotypical hitchhiker, vanishing hitchhiker, or any of the usual things you hear about people encountering while they're on the road, UFOs, cryptids, whatever. That doesn't fall into any of those usual scenarios that you hear about in these kinds of anomalous events. So thought that was a neat one as well. That's I haven't heard of that too much. I don't think I've had anything like that at all so far on my show yet. Though I feel like I've heard of similar events through other shows I've listened to over the years. Just like I said, not too often. So that's a good one to have sort of in the archives, as they say. And who knows, maybe in time more similar accounts will show up. In a way, it's almost like the first account, the first account that I shared tonight, and that it was a what appeared to be an inanimate object, or at least that's I guess sort of similar. There was a stone there in the first account, but there was something else there that the writer saw that vanished in that one. But yeah, a couple of fairly unique experiences to start off the first show tonight. So moving on to the next one here. This one says, this happened in 1988 when I was 3 years old in the attic playroom of my aunt's house. Stairs came up the right side of the room. The room itself was about 10 to 18 feet large, I guess they mean, with slanted walls. There was a box TV in the left corner and a rocking chair in the right corner opposite the TV. Partway along the right wall was a door to a cubbyhole storage room for toys. I noticed the rocking chair slightly rocking. I went to the storage room, which had a sliding latch. The pull string light in the storage room was already on. A baby doll was floating about a foot off or away from the light. I quickly shut and locked the door, then ran downstairs. I didn't tell anyone about the incident at the time. While on leave from the military, I visited my aunt, and I'm guessing this is in more recent times. We discussed ghost stories about the house. I finally shared my childhood experience. My aunt said she 100% believed me. After moving out, the landlord told her about renovations that were done to the house. During this time, a body was discovered, buried in the backyard. The previous tenant family, allegedly buried a family member in the backyard without telling the landlord. And that's where that one ends. That's a lot to happen for such a short amount of time there, but also, now it doesn't really go into the details, but it sounds like the aunt had other experiences there as well that they didn't go into. But that's I don't know, that's a lot, and I can see why. I mean, at first it's you might think 3 years old, that's a lot to remember for 3 years old, but there are people that do have those memories, And I could see something that surprising, seeing basically a doll floating in the air. It's like a horror movie, except for I'm guessing at 3 years old, the kid at the time hadn't seen any horror movies. At least I'm hoping anyway. So it sounds like someone was trying to get their attention there. And yeah, that's a wild one. Even just the whole setting sounds somewhat creepy in a way. I mean, I'd still want to go check it out because I'm interested in these kinds of things. But yeah, and the rocking chair was also moving, even though it seems like that wasn't too alarming to the writer. I wonder if that that happened before when they went there in previous visits and then just got used to it or didn't think anything weird about it. I think when you're a kid, and I've heard this before, people say this before, you see things that you don't know how they work, but they appear to be working in a certain way, and you just go with it. But then at some point, obviously they saw this object that was floating in the air that shouldn't have been, and that seems to be what told them that the situation was not normal. So, and who knows for sure if all that was related to the burial of someone in the backyard. It could have been. It's really hard to say without details and more details on the circumstances, which I'm okay with not knowing. But yeah, that's a wild one there. That's a lot happening. You have the rocking chair already when you get into the room to start with. And then you get into the room that has a light that should probably usually be off, but isn't. But you could still write that off as someone forgot to turn it off. But then you have this doll floating in the air as well. That's definitely, I don't blame the writer there for getting out after that. But yeah, that's a wild one. That's a lot going on there. Moving on to the next one here. Let's see. This one says, my wife had a close relationship with her father. They shared a bond over music, especially one classic rock group in particular. Her father passed away in 2020. When her father's belongings were sorted out, my wife requested the clock radio that she and her father used to listen to. The clock radio was a generic wood grain clock radio from the 80s or 90s. My wife kept it for sentimental reasons. We use it now in our breakfast nook to play music during the kids' breakfast. It was known to the children as Grandpa's radio. For the past 4 months, the radio has been turning on by itself. This happens between 3 and 4 a.m. The first time, only my wife woke up. She didn't remember what it was playing. The second time happened a few weeks later. Again, only my wife woke up. The radio was playing a song by the group that my wife and her father loved, with the word love in the title of the song. My wife found it meaningful and went back to bed happy. A month or two later, both my wife and I woke up to the sound of the radio at around 3 a.m. It was playing another song by that same group. The physical on-off switch was in the on position. We discussed the event, but we weren't fully convinced it was paranormal. The most recent event happened about a week ago. I woke up first this time. It was around 3 a.m. The same band was playing again. I felt spooked. These events always occur around 3 a.m. the radio always plays songs from the same group. We're not sure if it's my father-in-law communicating, or someone, or something else. If it is him, though, it would be nice if he would pick songs from other classic rock groups as well. That's where that one ends. I would be curious to know about the settings. If there's, and I'm looking at the chat here. DG says, I always wonder if people check for an alarm being set. Yeah, and then just what if there was the one that was set in it before they even got it. And I mean, if it's a big enough band, and it was, I don't want to say for copyright reasons or whatever, just in case, but it wouldn't surprise me that they're played a lot on any given station, especially radio stations. They seem to play the same set of how many ever songs quite often. They don't really, a lot of stations, from what I've heard over the last years anyway, they don't always go through a ton of songs. They have their sort of usual catalog. So that in and of itself is not uncommon. I would wonder if there was any other sort of sense of energy that the writer's wife there got when it happened that sort of told her it was her father, or I don't know. That's always hard to say with devices like that, because now I wonder, it did say that there was an on-off switch, and it was they would have it off when they weren't using it. So I wonder if there can still be an alarm when that's set, when it's off, or that will go off when that will sound off, or that will turn on the radio when it's off. That I don't know, because I don't know that the radio, and even then, it'd probably take a while to figure that out. But I also don't doubt that spirits, entities, whatever, can turn on devices at the times that they want to send a message either. It's sort of one of those things where I think both things are possible. Yes, it can just be a device that is set a certain way that fits the circumstances, or sort of seems to be acting in a weird way when it's not. But also, I do think that devices can be affected by people and spirits, entities, whatever, energies as well. So I think both things are possible. And as long as nothing bad is happening other than just that waking them up from time to time, doesn't sound like it's every day, then I don't see a major problem with that. But yeah, DG in the chat says, I would assume it would be turned off at bedtime, right? Had an old one, but can't remember what the alarm setting was, right? And every model, every company could do things a little bit differently too. Who knows? But yeah, I thought that was a neat one, just because I've heard so many accounts of that, of devices turning on and playing songs that are meaningful. I would wonder too, and this is something you have to I'd have to know the radio station and know exactly what song they played every morning at 3:00 or whatever. On all those other mornings where it didn't turn on, was that favorite band not being played at that time? So that's a question as well. But that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all on the next episode of Salsidoparanormal. Take care.